What was my first introduction into gaming? Well, it's a pretty fun and long story, but I'll give you the short version. Um, I came in late into the gaming scene. I was born in 1987 here in London, Ontario, and I remember my first home console very well. Actually, it was the Atari 2600, and I remember it very well because my father used to play Miss Pac-Man and Space Invaders for so many hours that I would never ever get a chance to actually sit down and play. But I became very into games was when I went into public school when I started school, and I was a very sick child when I was younger, and because of it, I was pretty badly bullied. I was born with asthma. Got my first asthma attack when I was very young, to the point where I passed out for a long time, and I don't remember what happened except waking up in a hospital bed beside my mom. And video games were always that thing to get away from the world, get away from the sickness. And like I said, because of that, I was bullied a lot in public school for a while. Didn't have very many friends because nobody wanted to be friends with the sick guy who would always pass out or take his inhalers during class. But my very first system that really got me into gaming, and it wasn't a home console actually. A lot of people think that the very first system that I got hooked into was a home console, but it wasn't. My very first system was actually, and I got it right here in mint condition, which I'm very proud because I still have mine in mint condition, and that was the Nintendo Game Boy, which I even have my original game. And this was my very first system and my very first game, which is Kirby's Dream Land, and that's why I love Kirby to this day, because he was my very first mainstream video game. And I loved it because I was able to take it with me everywhere I went, and because it was hard to make friends, recess was always taken by me playing my Game Boy. And at that time, consoles were very expensive, and my parents really didn't have that much money at the time. Though I remember getting that system, getting the Game Boy for my birthday, and I was so happy to finally have something that I could take with me and something I could play that was just mine alone. I didn't have to share. And then one day, which was really nice, and it was a couple of years after the NES released. One day, I came home from school. I was crying because there was this one time where I really wanted a Nintendo system because everybody had one. But I came home crying one day, and my parents came home from work, and they had a surprise, and it was an actual Nintendo console that they purchased off of somebody that they worked with. And it was nice because it came with 2 controllers, came with a light gun, and it came with 2 games, I believe. The one that I used to play the most, though, was always Super Mario and Duck Hunt. But I remember that system really changed my life. That and the Game Boy really changed things for me. Was I a part of the console war? Yes, I was part of the console war. There was a time there where I was really big into Sega and their mascot, Sonic the Hedgehog. And I remember begging my parents for a Sega Game Gear. And for those who don't know what the Game Gear was, it was Sega's first portable console to rival Nintendo's Game Boy. And if you guys don't remember the system, it ate batteries like you wouldn't believe. It took 6 AA batteries and would only last you about an hour if you were lucky. But it was one of my favorite handheld consoles beside the Game Boy. I had both of them at the time. When you have a company that's trying to outpace the other, they're always going to try and make games better than the other console. And there was, like I said, there was that one time where I preferred to have a Sega to a Nintendo. Not because I didn't like the Nintendo at the time, but because everybody was playing Sonic, and there was something magical about not only the graphics, but about the music that was used in that game, or just the main idea of running through a level, collecting as many rings as you can, and defeating Dr. Robotnik, which would later be nicknamed Dr. Eggman. The console war was probably one of the highlights of my childhood. If you didn't have a Nintendo, you had a Sega. If you didn't have neither, you got both. It was one of those things. So yeah, I was part of the console war, and I'm proud that I was part of that console war. I'm proud that I owned both systems and that I supported both at the time. Why not Nintendo? Nintendo has always been one of those companies that has always made games that focused on family and fun. And I don't know what it is about Nintendo, but could be that they have the best iconic characters in gaming. They've been around for years, always re-innovating all their franchises. You buy one Mario game, it's never the same as the other. They are constantly changing. It's always changing the envelope of what you know. And, you know, I've been asked this question so many times of why I choose Nintendo to any other company, and it's that main fact. Nintendo has iconic characters that have been around for over 25 years. And if it wasn't for Nintendo, gaming today would not exist. Atari was one of those consoles that really brought the main focus of people into what gaming really is, but it killed itself with E.T. Nintendo was raking in the benefits of what they could do if they went into that market. And as I've said before to many people, Nintendo is and always will be one of those companies that will survive with the times. What are my thoughts in gaming and society today? Well, let's be honest. When we were younger and the gaming revolution started, it was one of those things that were not very popular at the time to the extent where everybody played them. And as a gamer at that age, I always wished that that everybody was a part of it, that everybody would play, because there was that time where you would be made fun of and be classified as a geek or a nerd because you had an interest in that type of media. It was not really one of those things that everybody would get hooked on. At that time, it was at a younger age group, and most of those age group were males. But compared to nowadays, where gaming has become this huge industry and everybody plays it, it's become the new normal now. It's one of those things that you never thought was going to happen, but it did happen. There's a good and a bad side to, for me, what I see gaming now. And a lot of it has to do with the new social media and outlet of stuff that we didn't have back in the early days of gaming. And what I mean by that is marketing. Marketing for gaming systems and even the game itself are horrible. Constant updates of gaming, or just constant updates of your system now, it's horrendous that you have to turn on your console and update it almost every 3 times a week. Gaming now, with gaming and franchises and companies, their main focus is not to make a game complete or fun anymore. It's focused on how much they can get from DLC, how much they can get from an unfinished game priced at a high cost of $80 a game. I myself have given up on Sony and Microsoft. I have gone strictly Nintendo now, and I know I'm gonna get a lot of jokes and hate on that, but I just don't find. I never liked Microsoft to begin with. I thought Microsoft should have never gone into gaming, but with Sony, I lost interest with Sony because they killed off all their franchises. They've killed off their mascots that they used to have when the original PlayStation came out. They're constantly killing their handheld systems. They bring it and they kill it in a year, less than a year. Same type of game over and over again. And there is no interest, there's no fun into it anymore. To me, like I said, I'm strictly Nintendo now and I'm very happy. I think Nintendo is still popular because they can still reinvent their franchises. Nintendo is known for coming back out of the shadows, and I think that's what a lot of gamers have to get excited for. I think with their new console and their new leadership of Nintendo now, as their new president has taken over, I think we're going to see a change amongst the consoles. There are no exclusives anymore. Nintendo is the only system that has exclusive games, and I think that's what's going to lead the future. To me, Nintendo will always be popular, always be relevant. My favorite consoles, now that's a hard one. I actually have a few that are my favorite consoles. One of my favorite consoles of all time is the Sega Dreamcast, the last system that Sega ever created. I'll do my top 5, and it's a mix of console and portable. I'm more of a portable guy, so you're going to see more portables on my list. But the top 5 I have to say that are my favorite consoles is, as I said, Sega Dreamcast. This is in no order. This is just my top 5. It's Dreamcast, the Nintendo GameCube, the Nintendo 3DS. I'm going to say my Game Boy Advance, the original Game Boy Advance, without the backlight, is still one of my favorite consoles of all time. And my Wii U has become one of my favorite consoles of all time. Which system do I have the most games for? Well, the system that I have the most games is my Nintendo 3DS. And I have currently over 40 games for my console. What am I currently playing at the moment? Well, currently I am playing a game that I picked up, and I stand behind this game 100% as it is one of the best games of all time. And I'm going to get judged for it, but it's true. I think it's an amazing game, and it is Metroid Prime Federation Force. Now, I was very, very happy with this game when it was first announced.